Think of a time when everything was stacked against you, when everyone told you there was no chance of winning. Now imagine facing someone twice your size, covered in armor, with an entire army behind them, while you're standing there alone, holding nothing but a sling and 5 stones. This is David versus Goliath. But here's the thing. This legendary battle isn't just some underdog story. What really happened that day is way more interesting than what most people think. The Philistines had been Israel's biggest enemy for years. They lived on the coast and kept trying to take more land from the Israelites. They were skilled warriors who made advanced weapons from iron, while the Israelites mostly had bronze. Now another war was breaking out. The Israelite army, led by King Saul, marched to the valley of Elah to stop the Philistines. When they arrived, they set up camp on one mountain, while the Philistines were on another mountain across from them. A valley lay between the two armies. The Israelites were ready for a normal battle, but then something completely unexpected happened. A massive warrior walked out from the Philistine camp. His name was Goliath, and he was over 9 feet tall. He wore heavy bronze armor and carried a huge spear. Goliath stopped in the middle of the valley and shouted a challenge that shocked everyone. Why fight a whole battle? Choose one man to fight me instead. If he wins, we will become your servants. But if I win, you Israelites will serve us. Every morning and evening for 40 days, Goliath would come out and make this same challenge. The Israelite soldiers, who had arrived feeling confident, were now terrified. No one dared to fight this giant. This challenge was more than just a fight. It was psychological warfare. Every day, the Israelite army had to watch this giant mock them, and their fear only grew stronger. Even King Saul, who was the tallest of the Israelites, wouldn't dare to step forward to fight. This is where our story takes an unexpected turn. One day, a young shepherd named David arrived at the camp. He wasn't even a soldier. He was just bringing food to his older brothers who were in the army. David was the youngest of 8 brothers, and no one took him seriously. But unlike his brothers, David knew God in a deeply personal way. While others saw him as just a simple shepherd boy, those long hours alone in the fields had shaped him into something extraordinary. He wrote songs about God's greatness, played his harp, and spent countless hours in prayer. The quiet hillsides were his training ground, but not just for his faith. As a shepherd, David faced real dangers that most soldiers never experienced. Lions and bears would often attack his flock, trying to steal lambs. But instead of running away, David fought these predators with his bare hands. He'd grab them by their fur, strike them down, and rescue the lambs from their jaws. These battles weren't just about protecting sheep. They were lessons in courage, trust, and divine protection. Every time David defeated a lion or bear, his confidence in God grew stronger. True strength doesn't come from armor or weapons, but from trusting in God. This was why David could face threats that made grown men tremble. While others saw Goliath and thought, he's too big to fight, David looked at the giant and thought, he's too big to miss. No enemy was too powerful when God was on your side. King Saul finally agreed to let David fight. He tried to dress David in his own royal armor, a bronze helmet, a heavy coat of mail, and his sword. But David could barely walk in all that gear. "I can't go in these," he said, taking them off. "I'm not used to them." Instead, he picked up his shepherd's staff and chose 5 smooth stones from the stream. As David walked down into the valley, Goliath emerged from the Philistine lines. When he saw who the Israelites had sent to fight him, he was insulted. Here was a young boy, good-looking, probably still with rosy cheeks, carrying a stick like he was going to shoo away a dog. Goliath's voice boomed with mockery. He cursed David by his gods, shouting, "Come here, and I'll give your flesh to the birds and wild animals." But David didn't flinch. His response revealed why he was different from every soldier who had cowed before Goliath. He shouted back, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands." The armies watching from both hillsides were stunned. On one side stood a giant of a man, covered in bronze armor from head to toe, weapons gleaming in the sun. On the other, a shepherd boy with a staff, a sling, and an unwavering faith in his God. The entire future of Israel hung by a thread as David walked down into the valley. On both hillsides, thousands held their breath, an entire nation's freedom at stake. If David fell, all of Israel would become slaves to the Philistines. Their sons would work Philistine fields. Their daughters would serve in Philistine homes. Everything God had promised them. The tension in the valley reached its peak as Goliath began to move. Each thundering step forward made the ground tremble. Some Israelite soldiers turned away, unable to watch what they thought would be the slaughter of a young shepherd boy. David reached into his shepherd's bag and pulled out one of his 5 smooth stones. In one fluid motion, practiced thousands of times, he loaded his sling. Then, as the fate of his people rested on his shoulders, David began to run toward the giant, his sling whirling faster and faster above his head. With perfect precision, guided by the Lord, David released the stone. It cut through the air with devastating speed. The stone struck Goliath directly in the forehead, sinking deep into his skull. The impact echoed across the valley like thunder. The giant's massive frame stood motionless for a moment. Then, like a toppled tower, crumbling to the ground, Goliath crashed face down to the earth. The ground shook with his fall. David ran straight toward Goliath. With no sword of his own, he pulled Goliath's own massive sword from its sheath. With one swift stroke, he cut off Goliath's head, confirming beyond any doubt that the mighty Philistine champion was dead. The valley erupted. The Israelite army, which had stood paralyzed with terror for so long, suddenly burst into deafening cheers that shook the mountains themselves. The Israelites pushed the Philistines back to their coastal cities, breaking their dominance over the region. But this was just the beginning of an even greater story. David's defeat of Goliath launched him from obscure shepherd to national hero. Though King Saul's jealousy would force him into years of hiding, David eventually became king of Israel, establishing a dynasty that would change history. Under his reign, Israel grew from a loose collection of tribes into a powerful kingdom. But David was far from perfect. His affair with Bathsheba and the murder of her husband Uriah showed that even great heroes can fall. Yet, when confronted with his sin, David's deep repentance revealed why God called him a man after my own heart. From this very relationship with Bathsheba came Solomon, who would build the great temple and become known as the wisest king who ever lived. Through David's lineage, generation after generation, would eventually come Jesus Christ himself, the ultimate king whose kingdom would have no end. This epic story started with a shepherd boy refusing to back down from a giant. But it was never about David's courage alone. It was about his unshakable trust in God. When everyone else saw an unbeatable enemy, David saw an opportunity for God to demonstrate his power. The giants we face today might not be 9 feet tall, but they can seem just as intimidating. Fear, doubt, impossible odds, overwhelming circumstances. Yet the lesson remains the same. When we trust in God more than we fear our giants, nothing is impossible. Whilst Christians debate about using AI, I've secretly used it to reach over 500 million people across social media platforms and generating multiple income streams, all whilst glorifying God. I'm not here to convince you whether AI is good or bad. I'm here to show you what's possible, creating viral content that can reach millions of people, building multiple revenue streams, or simply amplifying your creative gifts and pursuits. I'll show you the exact system that's worked for me and hundreds of others. Christian content or not, this is about multiplying your impact, whatever your calling may be. Every day, these tools become more saturated. Every hour you wait, someone else is capturing the attention of millions who could be hearing your message. Your gifts were meant for such a time as this. The question is, will you be ready? Click below now